Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to discuss the allocution. And the allocution is your conversation with the judge, which is no promises or guarantees here, but this is going to be up to you. And it's your opportunity. It's the first time that the judge is going to meet you and you're going to meet the judge. And it's your opportunity to talk to the judge comfortably and possibly be able to get the judge to lower the sentence that they have in mind, because judges already come into your sentencing hearing with a predetermined idea of how they're going to sentence you. And so for everyone, this is different about, how they're going to, how you're going to approach, this particular point in your sentencing hearing. But there is a common denominator for everybody, and that is that this process all starts several months before you get to your pre-sentence interview. And by that, I mean, it starts by addressing your personal narrative, your story, your history. It's your background, because judges all understand that crimes do not happen in a vacuum. And so they're all going to eventually want to know, why you did what you did, what happened, uh, because they know about everybody else. They know that your attorney is going to say nice things about you. They know that the Department of Justice wants a conviction, and they know that the prosecutor wants to put you in prison. So the only person they know nothing about is you. And if you do not take your time to really take the time to develop a well-written personal story, a history, autobiography, call it what you will, but that explains from childhood. And you may need to have someone like a coach. You can hire me. I would love to have you do that. But that, takes you through life and explains how you got to this point in your life, then the judge will be left with no options other to sentence you based on the four corners of your pre-sentence report, which is based on your indictment. And chances are, you don't look you said you don't your indictment doesn't make you look much better than Jimmy Hoffa or anybody else that has been through this part of the federal sentencing pathway. And so your opportunity is to take the time with someone who has been through this and write a well-written personal story which touched on all the points that the probation officer is going to need to fill out their pre-sentence report worksheet, which is going to turn into your pre-sentence report, which is what the judge is going to use to sentence you. And at the same time, if you're lucky enough to do all of this, and you can come in prepared with, letters that attest to your character, you can come in with a release type plan. And while it seems premature, at the very beginning, if you know someone who is willing to write down that, and no one has a crystal ball as to where we're going to be, however many months or years later until you're released. But if they're willing to put in writing that if they have a position open, they'd be very willing to hire you because they know you for a long time. You're a great individual. They know your skills. Then that's a great letter to have as a character reference letter. But all of this needs to be, written down, and all the documentation put together in an organized manner, with the support of your legal team, and then hand it off to your probation officer a week or so before you get to your pre-sentence interview, so that by the time that you get to your interview, the probation officer has all this information. They're able to go ahead and fill out their report so that when you actually meet, they have time to get to know who you are personally. Makes sense, right? They're not under the gun to be writing and talking to you at the same time. And they may come away from the interview thinking that you've taken this seriously, which is a good thing to know. And you're not the really horrible person that the indictment makes you out to be. Second, it's important to own the mistake, take responsibility, and demonstrate sincere remorse. And this is not me saying this, but this is taken from interviews with, federal judges from coast to coast by attorney Alan Ellis, who's interviewed them. And so this is a very big deal. Now, you may have your own opinion about, taking responsibility, demonstrating remorse, understanding that every crime has a victim. And so this may be something that you need to review with someone who's done this before. And you can find all my contact information on the screen. But this is something that all stakeholders going forward, which is going to be your probation officer, who is the most important person in your life. Let me get that out right quick. Is that the probation officer who is interviewing you, They are very important, and really, you want to make them your best friend. Now, you're not going to be able to do that, but you don't want to anger them, and you want to make their work as easy as possible. And by you getting all the information to them early, by showing them that you take this seriously, they may pass on a favorable recommendation for your sentencing, for your character, for your placement to the judge, because judges depend on them. And taking responsibility, demonstrating remorse, and understanding that that you've created victims, and you understand that you have to make amends, and you have remorse for the pain that you've caused them, are critical for you moving past this phase of the sentencing hearing. And judges want to hear from you. And this personal narrative, history, or story, this is like the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all factors of your life. And so this is, that's why it takes a long time to write this stuff out. An allocution, this conversation with the judge, is not meaningless. Federal judge Mark Bennett has been on the court for a long time. And like other judges, he likes to speak to individuals who understand what happened. What are you doing to avoid returning to their courtroom? Because the judge at sentencing is going to ask you if you have anything to say. And judicial sentencing vividly showcases governmental power. And sometimes, and this comes from the article, allocutions are not meaningless, that judicial sentences vividly showcase governmental power, and sometimes on the part of other participants, repentance, recalcitrance, compassion, sorrow, and occasionally forgiveness. In today's world of vanishing trials, it's one of the few places where the federal judge regularly interacts publicly with citizens, and that's going to be you. So he has 5 rules of allocution. The first rule: this is for attorneys. Discuss the allocution early and often with your client. He is shocked how often the defendant turns to the defense counsel, and often an experienced assistant federal public defender or CJA counsel is asked by the defendant, should I say something? In my particular case, I did the same thing. The difference is that I had a federal prosecutor turned white collar defense attorney. And when the judge asked me if I had anything to say, I turned to him. I didn't know what to say. I said something like, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to have to say anything. The second rule: have some idea what your client is going to say, because you don't want the client to say anything. They could wind up making their sentence longer. Third rule: avoid cliches. You don't want to be overly apologetic, thanking the universe. You don't want to be narcissistic. And you definitely want to go in, you don't want to go in saying you've seen the light, because all of this stuff, remember that attorneys and judges, rather, they have cases back to back for 20, 30 years. So they've heard everything. It's got to be sincere and from the heart. I've written throughout my website, they've got great BS detectors. You don't want to push that button. The fourth rule: a really bad allocution can earn you a longer sentence, which I've already touched on. Fifth, sometimes the defendant should never say anything, shouldn't allocute, which I think I touched on. The allocutions that Judge Mark Bennett says work is a sincere demeanor, a discussion of what taking full responsibility means to you, the defendant, an acknowledgement that there are victims, even when the pre-sentence report indicates that there are no victims, as it does in most drug cases. Understanding of how the crime affects the victims, an expression of genuine remorse. They plan to use prison or probation time in a productive manner. That's a big one. And a discussion of why the defendant wants to change his or her criminal behavior. And perhaps most importantly, information that helps humanize the defendant and the defendant's role in the crime. And this is where the personal narrative comes into play. All of these points, in addition to everything else that the probation officer needs for their pre-sentence report, can be accomplished in a comprehensive personal narrative. Lastly, I'll touch on that I had a client who did everything correctly. He had a great personal narrative, and he also went ahead and put together a book that was entitled, the book for my daughter, Why Daddy Had to Go Away. His daughter was 10. And he then put it on an MP3 player, and I turned it into a YouTube, which is on my website. So he did everything correct. And when the judge read, it was a short little book because it's for his daughter. The judge was in tears. The courtroom was in tears. And, I believe that the prosecutor wanted 150, 160 months, and he got 180 months or a little less. So putting in the effort does work. I hope you have found this helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is in front of you. And I hope you had a good day, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Once again, thank you.